It's a time when we should show the world that we can stand on our own feet. I was listening briefly to President Trump at the UN, and what he was just telling the whole world is take your country first. And don't think that anyone is going to pick your bills. And I think that is what we're telling the whole world here, that we're going to take our countries first. We're going to make sure we can finance our own budgets. We'll accept aid, we'll accept grants, but we'll not rely on them.
Yes, it is Tax Matters. It is a special International Tax Conference episode, and that is why we are coming to you from outside our studios. That was the Executive Chairman, Federal Inland Revenue Service, Chairman, Joint Tax Board of Nigeria, and we dare say, the #1 taxman in Africa, Chairman, African Tax Administration Forum, Mr. Babatunde Fowler, welcoming delegates to the 3-day International Tax Conference organized by INT'L, which was held in Abuja from Tuesday the 26th to Friday the 29th of September 2017. Mr. Fowler's charge set the tone for the conference, whose theme was building strong domestic tax regimes, strengthening personal income tax, value-added tax, and complex income tax. The 3-day International Tax Conference was attended by more than 30 of the 38 member countries of INT'L, as well as partner countries, USA, China, the United Kingdom, France, and multilateral organizations. To underscore the importance of the International Tax Conference to the host country, Nigeria, the Vice President and Chairman, National Economic Council, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, was personally in attendance to declare the conference open. Leading the judiciary was Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Walter Onogen, while the Senate and the House of Reps were represented by the respective chairmen of the committees on finance.
The African Tax Administrators Forum deserve our commendation for this timely conference and its important theme, building strong domestic tax regimes in Africa, strengthening VAT, personal income tax, and companies' income tax.
What stands in the way of African countries in their quest for optimum tax generation?
The constraints are similar, though in varying degrees in several countries across the continent. They include a large informal sector, including large subsistence agricultural sectors, tax evasion, tax avoidance, tax exemptions, and inequitable and opaque rent-sharing arrangements, especially in the extractive sector. Significantly also, the use of aggressive and often suspicious tax planning and transfer mispricing. By the use of this, multinationals minimize their tax payments, or put more graphically, simply dodge taxes. The Thabo Mbeki report on illicit financial flows discloses shocking details of tax losses to African economies by these practices of multinationals and most often their local collaborators. Paradoxically, the report shows that these practices lead to an estimated revenue loss for developing countries that is 3 times greater than the amount they receive in foreign aid each year.
Of course, the Vice President did not fail to talk about the Voluntary Assets and Income Declaration Scheme, VADES, of which he is the chief promoter.
We recently in Nigeria launched a Voluntary Assets and Income Declaration Scheme, VADES for short, backed by an executive order, to provide an opportunity for taxpayers who are in default under all relevant statutes to within 90 days voluntarily declare their assets and income and pay taxes on them while being forgiven payment of interest and penalties. Although the scheme targets local tax evasion, we're also interested in the large number of Nigerians who own property abroad and who have not been paying taxes on incomes from these assets. The British government's initiative on transparency in beneficial ownership of properties, we expect, will greatly assist this drive.
In conclusion, the Vice President had kind words for the organizers.
Let me again commend the forum for this most relevant knowledge exchange opportunity, and our local hosts, the FIRS, who have proved to be one of the most innovative and forward-looking tax administrations in Africa.
Nigeria as a country has taken a position that we can no longer rely on the sale of oil or other natural resources to fund our current or future budgets. And that has put on us the responsibility to ensure that all good-meaning Nigerians and corporate organizations pay what is due to the Federation, to ensure that we can increase our standard of living and also bring about a Nigeria of our dreams. Nigeria as a country still has one of the lowest percentages in terms of tax to GDP. Now, that is not far-fetched as to why. Part of the issue is that there has not been consequences for tax offenders, which is about to change. With the launch of VADES, all Nigerians, both individual and corporate organizations, have been given the opportunity to come forth and, as they say, sin no more, but to come forth, declare, and contribute to the Commonwealth to improve the standard of living of all of us.
Mr. Logan Watt, Executive Secretary ATAF, spoke in the same vein.
I do not need to say too much about the need for domestic resource mobilization in a world where the Sustainable Development Goals and the Africa 2063 agenda is going to need Africa to fund a lot of infrastructure and social development. The Sustainable Development Goals on its own will cost the world $120 billion US. This in a world where official development assistance is declining. The challenge is on us to close the financing gap. And building strong tax regimes is central to closing the financing gap.
In a goodwill message delivered at the opening ceremony, Nigeria's Federal Minister of Finance, Mrs. Kemi Adeosun, drew a link between taxation and economic development.
I'm particularly delighted at the presence of the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, which shows the seriousness with which this administration takes the issue of taxation. This conference could not have come at a better time, not only for Nigeria, but for Africa. As we've heard many times, there is a link between tax and development. And statistically, there is proof that there is no poor country that has a good tax compliance rate, and there is no rich country that has a low one. There is a definite link between tax and prosperity. There is a collective awakening in Africa that it's time to do things for ourselves. We know that development finance bills, budgets are constrained. We also know there's a general feeling in the international community of putting their own countries first. Now it's time to put Africa first. We have enough resources to drive our development sustainably. Of course, the other side to taxation is responsibility and transparency in the use of public funds. And this administration in particular, and indeed many administrations across Africa, are working very hard to improve transparency, to fight corruption, and to provide value for money for the tax revenues collected. And that gives confidence to the taxpayer to do the right thing. We in Nigeria are committed to improving our tax compliance rate. At 6%, we have one of the lowest tax to GDP ratios in the world, and we are determined to take that on as a project and correct it very, very quickly.
Opening formalities over, the 3-day conference got underway with 5 intellectually stimulating sessions on day 1 alone. Session 1 was chaired by the Federal Minister of Finance herself.
How do we boost revenue in times of sluggish economic growth? What is the macro and economic growth agenda? Of course, you all know that majority of African economies are commodity-driven, and commodity prices have taken an absolute battering in the last few years. We need to look inwards. We can't be dependent on resources. The good thing is that there are many countries that have absolutely no natural resources at all, but yet manage to run very good economies based on an effective taxation system. And so that's the very good news for Africa.
My key message in dealing with sluggish growth and the type of economic pressure we are experiencing is, as you said, Minister, in your introduction, we need to look inward for where that will come from. And the key of our experience over the last few years has been to look for efficiency gains inside the existing tax environment. If you look at East Africa and the average tax to GDP ratio in East Africa, Mr. Kapiri may share with us, but hovered in 2009 around 12%. Today we're speaking about 18 to 22%. And yes, there was economic growth, but it was the investment in good tax systems. It is the alignment of tax policy with tax administration. It is broadening the tax base and especially the willingness and the ability to tax high net worth individuals, to tax public officials, to tax those who are well connected politically. Those are elements on the continent that drains the personal income tax base. And then also to deal with some of those areas that we never want to tax, like property.
Believe you me, Zimbabwe in its current state, its revenue contribution to GDP is no less than 25%. 25%.
And everybody should pay. And if everybody should pay, it should start from the leadership itself, and then everybody else it's likely that they will follow. Now, on the informal sector, I think nowadays there are real opportunities of innovation. The communication technology has brought a lot of chances. People are just classified as being in the informal sector just because really of the inefficiency of the tax administration. I don't see how somebody who wakes up every day and works in a marketplace at a particular place every time pays the fee to the market corrector and pays for electricity at that same place. You can call those people informal. Yes, they are small taxpayers, but they are not informal. And if you cannot reach them, it's not their problem really, it's the problem of the tax administration there. So even what we call informal sector, we have to dissect it further. There is, I think, a lot of, for the lack of the word, I'll call it escapism. Whatever you cannot reach as a tax administration, there's that tendency to call it informal. But really, if you work with the local administration and do a lot of public awareness, because I think there is a study that was done here in Nigeria and Kenya, and the revelations were very interesting. One of the reasons why people say they don't want to pay taxes is because they don't see the link between the services people are getting and the taxes that they are paying.
One of the things we don't do enough of on the continent is investment in infrastructure. And when we do invest in infrastructure and we get from some countries investment opportunities that come and build roads and bridges and hospitals, some of these countries comes with their own labor. And when they do come with their own labor, they also come with great exemptions. And so that infrastructure development doesn't lift the standard of living of the local community where the road is built. So not only do we rob ourselves of the opportunity to generate income through that infrastructure investment, we also lose the opportunity to socially and economically uplift the community where the project is taking place, from where also taxes are due. And so part of the policy certainty, part of the policy predictability, and part of government spending really determines the extent to which income is generated in a way that builds a compliance culture within the country.
What is so intractable about solving the problem of accelerating investment in Africa? What do we do in order to record or experience quantum leap as far as investment in Africa is concerned?
I agree with issues, and surveys have shown that infrastructure is a major reason why investment does not come in. Human capital is another reason. I guess the paradox is if you need infrastructure to invest, we need to invest in infrastructure to encourage, the investment. And so why aren't we getting that investment in infrastructure? Why aren't we getting that investment in human capital? And I like to deviate a little bit from just talking about foreign direct investments to also actually talking about domestic, local investment. It's actually a lot easier on you as a person and on your pocket for you to invest in treasury bills, which will give you 14, sometimes 16% return on investment. And all you need to do is wait for the cycle, or either buy it primary or buy it secondary, put your money in treasury bills, and you get your money back. Than to think of investing in a business. You are dealing with governance issues in that business. You are dealing with alignment issues of culture. You are dealing with tax issues. Treasury bills, you don't pay any tax. You are dealing with tax issues. You are dealing with if you have to move your goods from one state to the other. You are dealing with a whole array of issues that have been on the table for perhaps as long as 40 years or more, multiplicity of taxes. So the just sheer headache of having to put your money to invest for it to work for you is a lot. Ultimately, at the end of the day, to generate employment, to create a much better environment, we need also that small level investment, which most of the people around will rather put in the bank than actually invest in other business. We need to ultimately realize that the person who is investing is human. If you make it easier for that human being to invest, to live, to do business, ultimately that person would think about investing in that community.
On day 2, delegates at the 8th International Conference enthusiastically went through equally stimulating sessions centered around the theme of the conference, building strong domestic tax regimes in Africa. Day 2 was rounded up with a gala night.
London, New York or Lagos, business or holiday, home or office, you can now carry out your tax transactions from anywhere in the world. You can now file all your tax returns, pay online, get a receipt and even process your tax clearance certificate from anywhere in the world online and in real time. All you need to do is log on to www.firs.gov.ng and click on e-services and be introduced to the world of innovation, convenience and transparency from the FIRS. You can also pay stamp duty as you register a new company with the CAC or for other transactions that require stamp duty payment online. You can also file your withholding tax returns and determine the withholding tax deducted from you is in government covers so that you can get your receipt within 45 days as long as the deduction has been remitted. Yes, all of this and more online at www.firs.gov.ng/e-services. FIRS, making tax administration as easy as ABC. Please note that all FIRS services are free of charge. This message is from the Federal Inland Revenue Service. It pays to pay your tax.
Among the eminent personalities that graced the 3-day conference were the chairmen of the Senate and House of Representatives Committees on Finance, as well as past distinguished executive chairmen of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, including Mr. J.K. Nayeju, Mrs. Omogwe Okaru, and Alhaji Kabiru Mashi. Also in attendance were chairmen of various state boards of internal revenue. Tax Matters spoke to some of the delegates, including the foreign delegates. You sit at top of the Finance Committee of the Senate, and we wonder, within the basket of resources available to government from all sources, which you are privy to, how well is taxation doing? How much are we getting? Are we getting close to picking our bills using taxation as the mainstay of the economy?
Well, so far we're not yet there. I mean, it's the history of our country has been such that there's been an over-reliance and dependence on oil. So each time there is a budget, the oil receipts, the projections and the expectations from oil sources would normally be, far more than every other revenue source. But I think that, there is also increasingly emphasis on taxes and taxation. And I think what we've noticed in the last few years is that gradually, taxation is beginning to be important and it's growing. The hope is that that growth direction is going to be headed northwards and never southwards. And that gradually, with increasing recognition about the fact that increasingly there has to be a local and domestic mobilization of resources for development, that taxation will come to occupy its own truly prime place in terms of its share of resources for budgeting.
Collection will be one of the bases of performance, and the collection has exceeded the target given to them.
Tax Matters also spoke to the Executive Secretary and the Chairman of ATAF. You are the Executive Secretary of ATAF. We wonder what kind of benefits accrue to member states from their membership of a platform such as ATAF.
It is incredibly beneficial for a country to be a member of ATAF. Through your membership and your membership fee, we charge a membership fee that is based on your GDP. The benefits of being a member of ATAF is that you can participate in the training and capacity building programs that we offer. We have, over the last 7.5 years, trained over 3,000 African tax officials in a number of areas, whether it's complex tax structures or whether it's audit and investigation or simply communication. So we offer a range of training programs, both online and seminar-based. You also benefit from participating in a master's degree that we offer through various universities. That is an ATAF design degree. And also, if you're interested in thought leadership and the high level of tax analysis, we offer you membership of the African Tax Research Network. And that is the incubator of African tax policy. Thought leadership debates, actual research done through universities and published in accredited journal. But more importantly, the benefit of ATAF membership is the fact that you get to come to a year of events where you get to meet your colleagues from another country, and often that country may be from a different administration culture or the same administration culture, normally something like, depending on the, who you were colonized by. It could be a British culture or a French culture or a Portuguese culture or an Arabic culture. And so you get to know, like we are doing at this conference, how are they dealing with VAT fraud? How are they dealing with multinational taxation? How are they broadening the tax base and dealing with the informal sector, which is one of the big problems on the continent? So those are some of the huge benefits. And the nice part of all is, being a member of ATAF, you get to develop solutions designed for Africans by Africans.
You sit atop ATAF, and we wonder what kind of contribution do platforms like this, or let's talk specifically about ATAF, what kind of support is ATAF able to give to member countries towards achieving this revenue balance that we are all aiming for?
Okay. Now, when you are talking about ATAF, basically it's made up of commissioner generals or heads of revenue agencies across Africa. They each have different experiences. They share ideas, they share strategies, they share technology. So basically, one can describe ATAF as a group of high-level consultants that come and give free advice. We have exchange visits to our respective countries, and we find ways to ensure that we support each other. Number one, in terms of exchange of information, which is very key. Exchange of ideas when it comes to technology, which is equally key, and what we call best practices. So we have got expertise within Africa, within the organizations, revenue agencies within Africa, and we hold training programs, and some of our staff also go abroad to train other staff in other African countries. And basically, we rub, as I say, we rub minds together to get the best results.
Our story of the 3-day ATAF International Conference on Tax in Africa continues next episode, as we had to put this episode to bed even as the conference was still ongoing in our bid to serve you the story hot and fresh. We promise to bring you the second part of the story of the 3-day ATAF International Conference on Tax in Africa next episode, and it promises to be more interesting. Hope is rising for Africa, and you must be part of it. So go out there and do your duty. Pay your tax. It is your duty, it is the law, and it is something to be proud about.
And for the first time, as an organization from Africa for Africans, we are showing the world that we are doing it for ourselves and we are collecting the revenue increasingly better.
See you next week.